Now we're going to look at the recording and payment of dividends. There are three important dates: the date we declare, the date of record, and the payment date. So on the declaration date, that's the date that the corporation issues a press release and records the liability. The record date, right, the date of record, is the date that the company has to determine who owns the shares of stock on that particular date. And then on the payment date, we're going to show me the money, right? That's when the checks get sent, and that's when the liability will be zeroed out. So on the date of declaration, that's when we record debit dividends, credit dividend payable, and it's always based on the number of shares outstanding times the dividend per share rate. So when a company releases the press release, they might say XYZ company declares a 4 cents per share dividend to shareholders of record of 3 weeks from that date, and then to be paid on, and then they announce a date. The beginning material in the course always just told you the amount of the dividends. Now we're at the point where we're actually going to try and calculate that. So it's number of shares outstanding times the dividends per share. What do we mean by shares that are outstanding? This is not like, ooh, these are the awesome shares that get dividends. Outstanding doesn't mean that they're wonderful. It just means something else. So overall, we have a total number of shares that were issued. Those are the shares that may have ever been in investors' hands. And they issued shares consist of two things: the shares that are outstanding plus the shares that are in treasury stock. Now, the outstanding shares, and those are the ones that get the dividends, those are the ones that are in investors' hands right now. Treasury stock are the shares that the corporation has purchased back of its own shares. So it's not an investment if a company buys back their own stock. It's treasury stock is what we call when a company buys back their own shares. And there's a separate video that details what treasury stock is and how to account for it. So we've got these outstanding shares. Those are the ones that we are going to pay the dividend to, and that's the amount that helps us generate the dividend amount in total. Then we've got this date of record. That's a record-keeping date only. No journal entry, no adjustment, no anything. That's for basically the investment banks to figure out who owned the shares on the particular date, and that's who's going to get the check. And then we've got the payment date, and that's the date we're going to settle the liability. That's why we're going to debit dividends payable, and we're going to credit cash. And again, the dollar amount is always the number of shares outstanding times the dividend per share, right? And that's the date we eliminate the liability. And that's what's required to record dividends.